Joining us this afternoon is Kaitlin Gannon of the Jacques Cousteau National Estuarine Research Reserve located in Tuckerton, New Jersey. Kaitlin has been the education coordinator at the reserve since 2016. Kaitlin possesses 12 years of professional experience, including environmental education, public outreach, and program coordination. Kaitlin is a board member of the New Jersey Marine Educators Association, chair for the Barnegat Bay Partnership Communication and Education Committee, and work group chair for the NERRS Conservation Action Education Work Group, which focuses on developing programs that foster sustainable behaviors and collective community action. So thank you for joining us this afternoon and sharing your expertise on this topic of turtles of New Jersey. And now I'm going to turn things over to you, Kaitlin.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Karen, for that intro. Happy to be here with you guys remotely. Welcome everyone. I'll take questions throughout. If you have any, just place them in the chat. I have the chat box open here. So if a question pops up, just place it in there. But like Karen mentioned, we'll take the rest at the end. But happy to have a discussion as we go. So this is one of my favorite topics to talk about is turtles of New Jersey. I worked a lot with turtles over the years, and they're a critter of mine that I kind of tend to geek out about. I worked with, I had an internship in Costa Rica while I was still in college, and I worked with leatherback sea turtles and down that way doing research on them. And I think that's kind of what sparked my interest in biology and conservation. And then for a long time, I was the education staff or part of the education staff at the Wetlands Institute, which does a lot of research and conservation on Diamondback terrapins, which is the type of turtle that's in the picture here on the right. So I always love to talk about turtles, and I think people, when they tune into, a program, I think that's a critter that they like to hear about as well. There's something about turtles that everybody just really likes. So we're going to discuss the kinds of turtles that we have in New Jersey, a little bit of, some characteristics of them, what makes a turtle, and some conservation efforts. So let's get started. Here's the Jacques Cousteau Reserve. This is where I work. It's the full name is the Jacques Cousteau National Estuarine Research Reserve. We're in Tuckerton, New Jersey. We are managed by Rutgers University, though we're part of a national network, a federal network of other national estuarine research reserves around the country. There's about 30 reserves total. So that's pretty cool. It's like a state federal partnership. And we do research, education, conservation, stewardship of, our coastal environments and the estuary. And the estuary is where rivers meet the ocean. So it's a very dynamic environment. A lot of, animals live in the estuary because there's so many nutrients and food supply. Protection from storms, things like that. Estuaries do provide a lot for us and the animals that live in it. And then in an estuary, we do have different kinds of turtles. But before we get to turtles, we always start with the question of what kind of an animal is a turtle. So there's some clues here in this slide of what kind of an animal a turtle is. And I'll talk about the turtle anatomy in just a second. But if you think what kind of animal a turtle is, place it in the chat box. Some people, when I ask this, they kind of trip up a little bit, but it's not a difficult question, but even though it might sound tricky, and again, there's some clues in the pictures here. Yeah, Kathy, excellent. Yeah, so it's a reptile. And a lot of people tend to think of them as amphibians or think frogs are also reptiles. So reptiles and amphibians tend to get mixed and matched a little bit since they're similar, but turtles are a type of reptile. And all reptiles have scales. They're all cold-blooded. They lay eggs and breathe air. So those are the characteristics of reptiles. They also have the misconception of like reptiles are always slimy, but that's not true. They have dry, scaly skin. You can see on the snake here and the iguana picture. And turtles have special scales on their shell. So here's their shell right here. You can see my cursor. Underneath the shell is the backbone. And then on top of the shell, this thin layer right here, those are special scales. You know, usually the scales cover like the head and the arms and the legs, but they have special scales covering the shell that are called scutes. So basically think of like the scale here, you know, on the snake, but just sort of widened and flattened, and those are scutes. And turtles will shed their scutes kind of like they shed their other parts of their skin. And you can see rings on the scute that somewhat distinguish years on a turtle. You can't determine exact years or how old it is based on the scutes, but it's kind of like seeing rings on a tree. You'll see rings on the scutes. So back to more, you know, anatomy of a turtle. We have a tortoise right here, and the shell are fused bones together on the outside, the top, the sides, and the bottom. The top part of the shell is known as a carapace, and then the bottom part of the shell is known as a plastron. And then they're fused together by these side bones as well. And fused to that is the vertebrae or the backbone. So if you see any cartoons of turtles popping in and out of their shells, or if you like me and you really like to play like Mario Kart or Mario games and the shells come off or there's just shells left, you have to avoid those turtle shells. That can't happen in real life. So the turtle is attached to the shell, it's part of their body, and they cannot pop in and out. Turtles are also cold-blooded, like all reptiles, and that basically means that instead of having like actual cold blood, it means that they can't regulate their own body temperature. So that's why you see a lot of reptiles like sunbathing or sitting on a hot surface or warm surface. It's because they're trying to warm up. And we do that too. Like, you know, if you go outside, you feel like it's nice and warm, it's sunny, you get warm. But our body stays at a temperature of about 98 degrees all the time, whether you feel cold or hot. For the most part, it stays around that temperature. A cold-blooded animal, their temperature really fluctuates depending on the temperature of the air or water around them. So they can't regulate their body temperature like a mammal or a bird can. So that's what cold-blooded means. And then all reptiles lay eggs. They're a little bit more soft than, say, a bird egg. They almost have like a leathery sort of feel or texture. You know, that includes snakes and turtles and other reptiles. And they breathe air. Even though many reptiles are found in water, they do have to come up to the surface to breathe air. Oftentimes they can hold their breath for a long time, depending if it's a sea turtle or crocodile or another reptile that lives in the water, but they do have lungs and need to come up for air. So, all right, move on. So there are a couple of different kinds of turtles. You may have heard of these terms before. Tortoise, turtle, terrapin, are they all turtles? And the answer is yes. So they have different names depending on where they live. So we have a tortoise who is a turtle that lives on land. So the top, excuse me, left picture here is of a tortoise. A terrapin is also a type of turtle, but lives in brackish water. Brackish water is a mix of salt and fresh water, and we'll get more to terrapins in a minute, but they're all turtles. So tortoises, a good way to distinguish them from other turtles is that, you know, they do mostly live on land. So they have features of a land type of animal. They have stumpy feet, kind of think of them as like elephant feet for walking on land. They also have bumpier, clunkier shells. So they're usually like a little heavier. So that gives them characteristics of a turtle that is adapted to being on land. We have aquatic turtles that like mostly water, but will come on land sometimes to sunbathe. And we have freshwater turtles that do that. Here's a red-eared slider. And they have a special adaptation here, kind of like a duck. They have webbed toes for swimming. And they have a pretty flat shell. So you'll find these guys in like lakes, streams, rivers, those kinds of areas. A similar kind of turtle is a terrapin, which I just mentioned, that likes that salty freshwater mix. They also have webbed toes, just like a duck, a little bit flatter shell for easier swimming. And then we have sea turtles that live in water all the time. They live in the ocean, so they're always swimming. And they have adapted flippers and a flatter shell for easier swimming. So those are our turtle types. And we have lots of turtle types in New Jersey. New Jersey also has a lot of different geographical regions, and depending on the geographical region, you will find different kinds of turtles. I live down here. I think most of you guys as well probably live down here in the yellow area where we have like more sandy soil. And the coastal zone here too. And then as you get farther north, you have different landscapes, more hills and mountains up in the northern part of New Jersey. So some of the turtles we'll talk about live in different regions of New Jersey. So just something to keep in mind. We have terrestrial, wetland habitat, the brackish habitat, and saltwater types. We also, a lot of them are threatened and endangered as well, unfortunately. And there's major threats to turtles too, lots of habitat, road mortality, and oftentimes, unfortunately, illegal collection. A lot of people see turtles and want to take them home as a pet. Good question. What's the difference between wetland and brackish? So a wetland, you can actually have like a freshwater wetland, like a bog. So when I say wetland, it could be freshwater wetland, or it could be salty coastal wetland as well. Brackish can also refer to as like a bay. Habitat doesn't necessarily have to be a coastal wetland. So you can think of like Barnegat Bay as a whole. And then there's coastal wetlands that are on the outside of Barnegat Bay as you make your way to land. So that would be the difference. Let me know if that helps and answers your question. Okay, so we're going to start in the woods and then kind of make our way over to the coast and talk about the turtles as we go. So these are ones that you would probably commonly find in the woodland forests and in maybe nearby streams and ponds. Whoops, I went too far. There we go. One common species is the box turtle. You probably see these guys in your backyard. I have one that lives in my backyard. They're really a lot of fun when you see them. And that's the box turtle. That's the pictures that are right here. You can tell the difference between a male and female box turtle if you look at their eyes. The female one has a more brown yellowish eye, and the male has a red eye. But they're really interesting in the different like color variations and patterns on their shell. I've seen ones that are more brown, ones that are more yellow. So they really vary in coloration. But if you see it's sort of like a more dome-shaped shell, and if it does this, when you go up to it, it kind of actually can close up. That's definitely a box turtle. So in the beginning, we talked about different parts of the turtle. The bottom part being the plastron, which is these bony plates that are fused together, and scutes are on the outside. Their plastron is really unique. Most turtles just have a flat plastron, kind of like flat like a board, doesn't move. But the box turtle has a hinged plastron, kind of like a door, and they can actually move it up and close up and kind of move it up like a drawbridge. and close it up over their head and up over their bottom. So if something like a raccoon or a dog, right, comes up and starts sniffing it and wants to see if it can, you know, have it for lunch, the box turtles literally close up. And I think that's maybe where they get their name, box turtle. They're also sort of a square boxy shape. But it is a really unique adaptation that they have that not a whole lot of turtles can do, is they can close up like that. But very common. You can see them in the woods. You can see them around streams, like near the edges as well. And then we also have the wood turtle right here with the orange legs, kind of brown shell here. They are a threatened species in New Jersey, mostly found also in central and northern New Jersey, and also can be found in and around aquatic habitats, like along the edge of a stream. They actually prefer cleaner streams to either hunt in or as a water source. So they're actually good indicators of good water quality. So if you have a contaminated or polluted stream, you probably won't find wood turtles, but if you have nice clean streams, you find wood turtle, that's actually a good sign. It means that you have like nice clean waterways nearby. So that's really great. Okay, so we're gonna look at some more turtles here. The first one up top, I think most of us know what this one is. That's a snapping turtle. And by the way, these guys are found in freshwater wetlands, bogs, different kinds of marshes. Fen is a kind of marsh that I believe is groundwater fed. So if you've never heard of a fen before, it's just another kind of wetland. Different kind of unique wetland. So we have the snapping turtle. There's two different kinds of snapping turtles. There's the alligator snapping turtle, which is found more down south. And then we have these guys that are more northern, that are just known as snapper or snapping turtle. They are aggressive, and it's the largest species of turtle in New Jersey. You can tell that it's a snapper based on the shell. The shell is usually has these like sort of pyramid almost looking shape to it, the scutes, and then also they have very long tails. So that helps distinguish them from other turtles. But when you see one, you probably will know that it's a snapping turtle just based on its attitude and reaction when you walk up to it. Here, I believe that's the stink pot turtle, or common musk turtle. And they produce a very smelly, stinky smell when they are frightened. So it's very musky. You probably, once you smell it, you probably will know it the next time. And then we have the spotted turtle, which is down here with the, it's kind of a brownish color with orange and yellow spots on the scutes. When they're babies, they actually have one spot on each scoot on the shell. And then over time, they develop more spots. But they're very easy to distinguish because of the spots on the shell and the markings on the face. They usually also have this very like round nose too. And then we have the bog turtle, which is the bottom left corner here. Very dark, kind of smooth shell with a little bit of orange on them. And they are the most difficult to find in New Jersey. They're very endangered. Mostly it's due to loss of habitat. They're also one of the smallest turtles if you happen to be in the woods. They're pretty teeny compared to their other turtle cousins. And they have very specific habitat requirements. They prefer very specific types of vegetation. So they're not easy to find. They're mostly in groundwater fed wetlands. So that's the bog turtle. I actually believe it's the state turtle of New Jersey, which is kind of neat. And then last but not least, probably one that many of you have seen before is a red-eared slider, which is this one right here. This is a very common turtle that people keep as pets. And now we see it in New Jersey. It's actually not native to New Jersey. I believe they're native to more of the central or western part of the United States. But we have them now in our freshwater lakes, ponds, wetlands in the wild, because people had them once as pets. They couldn't take care of them anymore, and they quote unquote dump them into the wild, thinking that that's, you know, the best thing to do. But that is not recommended if you have a pet. And that's happened with other different kinds of animals, not just turtles, but it happens with snakes, it happens with different aquarium fish, and they become an invasive species. So an invasive species is an animal that competes with other native animals for food, other resources, and they actually outcompete them and kind of take over a little bit. I don't think that's the case with red-eared sliders. I don't think they're considered an invasive species, but they are a non-native turtle introduced to New Jersey. And the reason why is because people had them as pets. Okay, so we're going to continue with our aquatic turtles now. We're gonna now talk about our brackish water turtle that lives in the coastal salt marshes and also the coastal bays. Sometimes I even see these guys in the ocean, like near the beach, and that is the Diamondback terrapin. It is the only turtle that lives in brackish water. Again, that's the mix of salt and fresh. And they have very, very unique markings. They're sometimes gray or white with black polka dots. Sometimes they're more of a dark, like charcoal gray. So they really vary in coloration, which is really neat. You don't really see that in too many turtle species except for terrapins. And what's also really interesting is you can tell the difference between male and female pretty easily as well. So in this picture, I have a male and a female. If you want, you can put in the chat which one you think is the male, the one on the left or the one on the right, or the female. You can guess which one is which if you want to give it a shot. But that's known as sexual dimorphism. It's a type of creature. If you see it, you can definitely tell the difference between male and female, kind of like lions, right? You know which one's male, which one's a female, and you can tell that with the terrapins as well. Left male, yes, you are correct. So the left is the male, right is the female. So females are about twice the size of the males. And the reason being is that they have to hold a lot of eggs. So a female terrapin will have anywhere from about 8 to 10 eggs, and she needs a larger body to hold those eggs. She also expends a lot more energy than the male, coming up out of the marsh, digging a nest, finding a place to nest. So they really need a larger body because they have to build that nest. So yeah, full-grown male and full-grown female here in this picture. Male is on the left, female is on the right. And they're mostly carnivorous. They're going to feed on crabs, clams, and snails in the coastal salt marshes here. And they actually are a keystone species of the salt marsh as well. They eat what's known as periwinkle snails. And periwinkle snails are these snails that will eat the salt marsh grass. So all of this, the salt marsh or cord grass and salt hay that you find in the coastal wetlands, these little snails eat the grass and the terrapins eat the snails. So they kind of keep the snails in check so they don't overeat the grass, and then we're just like left with, you know, a bunch of marsh mud. So they do play a vital role in the food web. question in the chat is Forked River Marinas brackish. I think snappers are there. I'm not familiar with that marina, so I don't know if there's, I would have to maybe look at a map to distinguish if it's actually brackish water. Sometimes some of the streams that run into Barnegat Bay or the Mullica River, Great Bay Estuary, if it's far upstream enough, maybe it connects to a bay, but it's mostly fresh water by that point, that you could probably find snappers up that way if it connects to the bay. But I don't know that, I'm not familiar with that area, so I'm not really sure. So Diamondback terrapins, they are, a keystone species, and I believe they are a species of concern, or listed as a species of concern. So there are a lot of great Diamondback terrapin research that's going on throughout our state. One of them is the Conserve Wildlife Foundation of New Jersey. They do studies of Diamondback terrapins right down Great Bay Boulevard. If you've driven past our facility before, you're driving on Great Bay Boulevard, and eventually it opens up into this really nice large marsh peninsula. And quite oftentimes there are turtles crossing the road. They're female terrapins looking for a place to nest. And so while they're looking around finding a place to nest, they have a turtle team that goes out, gets measurements on the female, and also helps her across the road as well. So they have a terrapin database going on. And then the Wetlands Institute down in Stowe Harbor that I mentioned before, they have a similar effort, but they also have a Head Starter program. I'm not sure if Conserve Wildlife Foundation also has a Head Starter program, but what that means is that they will have teams of people that will collect roadkill females or roadkill turtles on the side road that unfortunately get hit by cars. And it sounds weird at first, but sometimes even though the turtle was killed, sometimes the eggs inside are still viable and are brought back to the institute where they are raised in captivity. So they'll collect the eggs, they have an incubator, they keep the temperature at a certain temperature to produce baby turtles. And there is a certain percent success rate with this. I'm not sure what that exact percentage is, but I think most of the turtles that go into the Head Starter program, most of the eggs will have a baby turtle result at the end. And then they'll keep the turtles for a little while until they're big enough to be released out into the wild. And then they tag them to, maybe down the road, they'll bump into it, as an adult, they can say, oh, this was a turtle from our Head Starter program. And that's kind of neat. So a really cool conservation effort there. Another interesting part of the Head Starter program is that they can control the temperature that the eggs incubate at. And that actually produces more females. So if you're a turtle, especially at least if you're a terrapin, warmer temperatures in the nest produce more females. Cooler temperatures in the nest will produce mostly males. So what they do at the Institute is they bump up the temperature just a little bit, so they produce mostly females, and introduce those females back into the wild, just because the ones that are getting hit by the cars are the females. So they try to balance that mortality rate out by sending more females back into the wild. And also more females will probably mean more production of eggs and keep the population going. All right, so that's about terrapins. Now, if you imagine we're out in the ocean off the coast of New Jersey, there are sea turtles, which a lot of folks may or may not realize, but we do have sea turtles that are swimming off the coast of New Jersey. There's only 7 species of sea turtles in the world, and 4 of them you can find swimming off the coast of New Jersey, which is pretty neat. The ones that we have are, my personal favorite is the leatherback sea turtle. These guys are huge. They probably weigh about the size of a small car, and swim all over. They're a pelagic turtle, which means that they are usually in like the deep ocean, but they come to the coast every once in a while. The smallest sea turtle is the Kemp Ridley sea turtle right here. The loggerhead sea turtle, these guys have a big head, big jaws. And then we have the green sea turtle here that like to eat seaweed, kelp, other submerged aquatic vegetation. So they like to feast on that. The loggerhead sea turtle, they like mostly crustaceans. So crabs, they like to, especially I remember seeing them in the Delaware Bay sometimes, because there's lots of horseshoe crabs in Delaware Bay. So they like to maybe munch on the horseshoe crabs and whelks and crabs. And then the leatherback sea turtle, they eat mostly jellyfish, which is interesting because they're so big, so they have to eat these jellies. And then I'm not sure what the Kemp Ridley sea turtle eats. That's probably something I should look into a little bit later. The other sea turtles that we do not see in New Jersey is the Australian flatback, which is the picture in the middle. So, off the coast of Australia. There's the olive Ridley sea turtle. They make this amazing migration all at the same time to a place in Mexico to lay their eggs, which is incredible. One of those really cool natural phenomenons. And then the hawksbill sea turtle. These guys are mostly in the Caribbean or tropical waters. They eat coral, so we're not gonna see them in New Jersey too much. And just to give you some scale of how big the biggest sea turtle is and how small the smallest sea turtle is compared to a person, is pretty cool. The thing also about the leatherback is that instead of scutes on the shell, like most turtles, they have these longitudinal ridges and a leathery skin on the top. So they're very different from other sea turtles and other turtles really in general. The interesting thing about the sea turtles is that they just make these incredible migrations. Hatchlings, when they first emerge, go into the water from the sand, they swim out into what's known as the Sargasso Sea and kind of hang out there for a long time. It's actually really not known how long they spend out there, but that's something that scientists are still trying to figure out, is how many years they might be spending out there as juvenile sea turtles before they, swim around other parts of the ocean. But then when they're adults, they do make these incredible migrations. They'll search for food and then come back to breeding grounds. And it's very interesting. They have something in their brain. It's actually an iron compound called magnetite. And that's what scientists think helps them when they are making their migrations. It's almost like they can detect the different polar magnetic poles of the Earth, and they can navigate that way using this iron compound that's in their brain to, find where they, the beach that they go to lay their eggs. It's pretty amazing. And here's some, real tracking of sea turtles. Here's another one of a sea turtle that was tracked from January of 2004 to, well, actually I think it was tagged maybe in 2003, I think at first, and then it went from 2003 to 2004, and then either the tag, popped off, or they retrieved the tag, but then it stopped recording around here. So it's kind of neat to see where these sea turtles have traveled to. Actually, it looks like it went off the mid-Atlantic coast for a little while, this leatherback sea turtle. If you want to mess around more with sea turtle migrations, you can go to this really cool website called OSearch. I'll move it over here. Oops. So you can track all different kinds of critters on OSearch. If you have any teachers on the call, this is a really fun way to look at real data with your students as well. And they're tagging, they tag and track real organisms, and they do a lot. They have sea turtles, they track sharks, they track whales, other marine mammals. So if you kind of zoom in here, this one was spotted just yesterday. Haley, the white shark, sort of off the coast of New Jersey, Long Island area. So that's really, really cool. So some people might be a little freaked out about that, but sharks, more people are killed by vending machines than sharks each year. So, don't have to worry about that. And if I zoom out and I can kind of come to some sea turtle tracking here, zoom in on maybe some of these guys. Oh, this turtle is being actively tracked. The date is September 23rd. You can click on it and you can see a little bit more about this turtle. It's a female loggerhead turtle. And they even give it a name and a travel log here. So the last ping was today at 11:30. So that's really, really neat. And you can, you can kind of see, oops, that's too much, sorry. See her path and her track of where she's been since, I guess last year. So last year was the first ping. And then it looks like she's hung around the Florida Keys for a little while. And then the last ping was yesterday. So you can see other turtles. This doesn't look like it was a recent ping, but there's this green sea turtle, Holly, and maybe some others here too. And we do have these sea turtles off the coast of New Jersey. They'll nest in and around Florida and the Caribbean. I think the farthest north a sea turtle species will nest is probably North Carolina. They don't really nest or come up onto the beach beyond North Carolina. And if it does in New Jersey, it might mean something's wrong, like it's not feeling great, or maybe it's a little confused and disoriented. So sometimes that will happen in New Jersey, but very rare. Usually they're just hanging out along the coast. But really fun website if you want to explore. You can probably have fun with this for a few hours and see what kind of critters are tracked. Right. So as far as I know, and I had made this presentation a little while ago, but as far as I know, with current status of sea turtles, I believe all of them are still endangered. They do have a lot of challenges right from the get-go when they are babies hatching out of the nest. Some of them don't even make it out of the nest. If you're a baby sea turtle and you make it to the ocean to become a breeding adult, you've hit the lottery really. A lot of turtles have a very high mortality or chance of mortality after, when they're a certain age, especially when they're really, really young. And that's the reason why lots of animals, certain kinds of animals do have lots of offspring. Sea turtle nests can have up to 80 or 100 eggs. And that's because a lot don't make it. So that's why there's a lot that are in a nest. Same thing goes for other animals that have a lot of offspring, just because they're highly preyed on. But different critters, seagulls, land animals like raccoons, or even sometimes feral dogs. And then when they make it in the ocean, they have other predators too, like your apex predators, such as sharks. But then there is also human anthropogenic or human impact, such as poaching, unfortunately. Sometimes they also get caught in debris, marine debris, such as fishing gear, fishing line. However, I know there's changes to certain fishing regulations. So this is actually a good thing, is that some nets while fishing have these little trap doors in case they do catch a sea turtle. They have this little sea turtle flap that opens when a sea turtle passes through, and it can just continue its way out and still catch the fish. So that's a really great example of adapting fishing gear and conservation. So that's pretty cool. Unfortunately, they also have boat strikes. Sea turtles are pretty slow, and especially with a big fast boat, sometimes can't get out of the way in time. And another interesting disturbance is actually light pollution. So we have a sea turtle that's laying its nest at night, and then we have all the city back here and all of its light pollution. So when sea turtles come onto the shore, they use the light of the moon to guide their way back to the ocean water. And sometimes the city that's by the beach with all of this light pollution really disorients the sea turtle. And sometimes it's trying to, find a place to nest, but sometimes we'll go in circles, and it also will disrupt the little baby hatchlings as well from getting back to the water. But certain towns have recognized this, especially in Florida, and at certain times of the year, after it gets to a certain point in the evening, there's an ordinance, a light ordinance. So you can't have like your lights on or any outdoor lighting, specific outdoor lighting on after a certain time. So that's kind of neat that community does that and recognizes that. And then just another obstacle for turtles is plastic pollution. Sea turtles, especially ones that eat the jellies, will see a plastic bag and mistaken it for a jelly, a sea jelly or jellyfish, and unfortunately will ingest it. But there is a lot of great work that is going on aside from the things I just mentioned. There are hatcheries along the Caribbean and Florida coastline to help, kind of like a little head starter program for sea turtles, and also tagging and tracking turtles and learning more about them will help with conservation as well. And there's different types of tags. You can have this kind of tag, which can be read while maybe a female is nesting and record it that way, or you can have something a bit more fancy and have like a radio tag or radar tracking tag that helps actually see the movement of the turtle, where it goes, and such. And then so there's a lot that you can do for helping turtles, sea turtles and the ones that we talked about that are more on land, and then the freshwater wetlands and freshwater lakes and streams as well. The biggest thing is, we talked a little bit about this earlier, is dumping unwanted pets. Turtles, I believe you can keep as a pet in New Jersey, except for if you do want one, you have to have a permit to keep one, which a lot of people have them and don't realize that they need a permit to keep a turtle, especially most breeds of turtles, I believe you need a permit. So if you do have one and then realize you can no longer take care of it, the best thing for it is to not put it into the wild. It might not know how to fend for itself, but also if it does and can figure it out, it might cause an ecological disturbance or imbalance, which we've seen with other invasive pets, pet dumping, such as different kinds of pythons in the Everglades in Florida, the lionfish off the coast of Florida as well is another pet that was quote unquote dumped and now is causing a lot of environmental problems. And if you do see a turtle in the wild, leave them be, don't take them home as a pet, even if it's a little baby or if it looks like it needs help. Sometimes we see turtles in these cute things and, you know, we want to help it and we think we're helping it by taking it home, but really that's not the right thing to do. Just to leave them out in the wild is the best thing for it. If it's spring and summer and you're on your way to the beach, you'll probably see turtle crossing signs. These are most likely to have you aware of Diamondback terrapins. They're very, very active in the late spring, especially, and they're frantic looking for a place to lay their eggs. And quite often they're crossing the causeways that, you know, summer crowds are taking to get to the beach. So just be aware of turtles crossing the road. And if you do see one and it's safe to pull over and help it, you can just take it in the direction that it is trying to travel to. If you bring it back in the direction that it, you know, came from, it's just going to try to cross the road again. So you want to grab it by either the end or the sides and then help it in the direction that it's going. And then for turtles and then other sea life, you really want to try to reduce your use of single-use plastics and plastics in general, so they don't end up in the environment. If you do see any trash in the environment, it's always good to remove it, put it in a proper receptacle. And if you do happen to see any dead or stranding sea turtles, you can call the Stranding Center, which is located in Brigantine, New Jersey. Even though they are the Marine Mammal Stranding Center, they do come out and help turtles, I believe. So that's their number. If you happen to see a stranded turtle, and if you are vacationing in, like, you know, Florida, North Carolina, just try not to disturb the nests, fill in holes. If you're making a sand castle or just having fun in the sand, you want to make sure you fill those back in, just so little baby turtles don't get stuck down there. And avoid the turtle if you happen to see one on the beach. And like we talked about, turn off those outdoor lights so they don't get disoriented. So those are some tips on how you can help the turtles of New Jersey that we have. I'll take any questions. Oops, go back. There we go. Hope you enjoyed that. And if you have any other questions for me, I can take them now. I can also put my email in the chat box if you want to reach out to me about anything else too.
What is the oldest known turtle that you know? You know, how old is the oldest known turtle?
Oh boy. I don't know. I've heard that the Galapagos tortoises are the longest living. And I believe there is a specific turtle that has been around for, you know, about 100 years or more.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Tortoises and sea turtles can live quite a long time, though. Very, very long. And turtles in general live a long time. I think terrapins are about, like, I want to say, like, between 20s and 30s. And people, when they have a turtle as a pet, they don't realize how long they can live. And that's another reason I think they get, you know, unfortunately dumped as pets, because they live quite a long time. And sometimes they outlive their owners.
Wow.
Yeah. But I don't know the specific turtle, you know, that's like the longest lived. Yeah.
You want me to put your email in?
Oh, sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Is it the Gannon?
Yes.
Okay.
Got my slides there. All right. Any other questions?
No questions from anybody, it sounds like. Let's see, let me, and EDU. So is that the right?
Yep, that looks good.
Okay.
And feel
If
free
anyone
to.
does have
Oh, go ahead.
New Turtle Zoo, is that Turtleback Zoo? Probably a Turtleback Zoo. You're thinking about the turtles at the Turtleback Zoo. I wonder what kind of turtles those were. They're probably the big, they were the large land turtles.
Yeah, usually when you go to the zoo, I think they have Aldabra tortoises. At least those are the ones that I'm familiar with. I interned at a zoo for a little while. I don't know if there's actually Galapagos tortoises in captivity at zoos and such, but I remember the species in particular that I saw most often was the Aldabra tortoise, which kind of looks like them. They have a very similar look to them, but also live very old or very, very long time.
They look old. This has been a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. I learned so much, and I really thought that turtles could come out of their shells. So that.
Oh yes, I know. Isn't it funny how like TV and movies make us think like these things? Because it's, you see it in, all these other areas or places in your life on TV and cartoons, and you just think that oh yeah, that can happen, but they really can't. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it, and it's now that you say it, it's like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
This program was recorded, so it will be uploaded to the Ocean County Library YouTube channel, probably about, I think, 10 days, but once I download it and upload it back in the presentation. So if anyone wants to share with their friends about this, please do, because this was wonderful.
Yeah, sure. No problem. Thank you for having me. And if you want to learn more about the JC NEAR and learn about our programs as well, feel free to email me at that email. Let me know if you have any additional questions too. I'd be happy to take them.
All right. Well, thank you. I think getting some good feedback. Thanks a bunch. Nice presentation. All right. Well, with that, I think we'll end here.
All right. Sounds good. Well, thank you everybody for your time. I'm glad you had a good time too. And thanks for having me.
Thank you. This was wonderful. All right. You take care. All right.
Thanks. Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Support public libraries. Like, share, and subscribe for more great videos.